I grew up in a house most people could only dream of. A sprawling mansion with meticulously manicured gardens, a refreshing blue pool, and lavish rooms, so many that if you asked me to name them all, I probably couldn't. Everything was prepared in advance. Every need met before I even thought to ask. Every morning, I woke up to sunlight already flooding my room. Breakfast was brought to me by the house staff, dishes I had randomly chosen the night before. After that, I'd spend hours scrolling through my phone, watching movies, or sometimes just lying around, wondering what I would do for fun that day. I had friends who were just like me. We drove expensive sports cars, flaunted the latest gadgets, and talked about extravagant vacations. Our lives were a never-ending string of parties and high-end purchases, things we never had to think twice about because paying for them was never our concern. But when everything comes so easily, you start to think it's all just a given. I used to think I was different, special. I used to believe that as long as I had money, everything would be simple, and I didn't have to worry about anything, because my father would always be there to worry for me. Many people told me I was living too comfortably, that I needed to learn how to be independent. But back then, I would just laugh and brush them off. I thought they were just jealous. I had everything, and I thought I deserved it all. But the truth is, I had never faced any real hardships. I had never had to fight for what I wanted, and that made me weak. There's a story I once read about kids from wealthy families in America. Some of them inherit vast fortunes, but instead of growing that wealth, they only know how to waste it, relying entirely on their parents' money. And when that money stops flowing, their lives spiral out of control. I used to think I was different, that I would never face that situation, because my father was a strong and talented man, and because I never had to do anything. But you know what? When you never have to try for yourself, you will never truly understand the value of what you have. And the most dangerous thing is believing that life will always be this easy. That was my biggest mistake. A mistake I would later pay for with both my pride and my growth. And then, one day, my father told me he wanted to talk. A conversation I thought would just be the usual reminders that I needed to start thinking about my future. But this time, everything was completely different. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon. I remember it so clearly because everything seemed so peaceful. I had just returned from a long trip with my friends, tired but satisfied. When I walked into the house, I saw my father sitting in the living room. He didn't smile or greet me as usual. His eyes were fixed on me, stern and intense, to the point that it made me feel a bit uncomfortable. "Son, we need to talk." His words echoed like something unfamiliar. Because usually, our conversations revolved around the things I wanted, the demands he would fulfill. But this time, his voice was genuinely serious. I sat down, trying to maintain the same indifferent attitude as always. I thought my father just wanted to lecture me again about taking life more seriously. And I was ready to respond with the same familiar lines like, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." But this time was different. He didn't scold me, nor did he offer advice or reprimand me. Instead, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Have you ever thought about what would happen if one day everything changed?" I was stunned. Changed? How could things change? My father was still successful. The company was thriving. I had no reason to even consider that possibility. I just gave a dismissive laugh and said, "You're worrying too much. Everything's fine." He shook his head. No, son. Things are only fine when people know how to hold on to them. You think everything you have is a given. But it's not. Everything must be built through effort. And if you don't know how to preserve it, it will disappear faster than you can imagine. Those words made me feel a bit irritated. I felt like my father was underestimating me. I had never experienced lack or hardship, so why should I have to think about such negative things? I replied stubbornly. I don't see anything to worry about. You're always here. Everything's fine. My father looked at me for a long time. His eyes clearly showed disappointment, but I didn't notice it at the time. He simply said, "You still don't understand what I mean, but one day you will." I thought that conversation ended there. Just another typical father-son talk, where I brushed off his warnings like so many times before. But then, something unexpected happened. The next morning, my father told me to get in the car with him. I assumed he wanted to take me to some new restaurant, or maybe just for a casual drive. But no, he took me to places I never thought I'd set foot in. Dusty streets where laborers worked tirelessly just to earn enough to feed their families. Tiny shops where elderly women sat stitching with trembling hands under dim lights. I saw a man selling fruit by the roadside, his hands calloused, his eyes weary but still determined as he tried to attract customers. I saw an elderly woman sewing clothes, her eyes strained but never pausing, not even for a moment. I had never paid attention to people like them. Never considered that there were those who had to work from dawn till late at night just to survive another day. For the first time in my life, I felt something was off. Maybe the life I once believed was so natural wasn't something everyone could enjoy. My father turned to me and said, "You see, not everyone gets to live as comfortably as you do. And not everyone has the opportunity to change their life, but every single one of them is trying, day by day." I remained silent. Those images kept circling in my mind. The fruit seller with his calloused hands, the elderly woman with weary eyes but unyielding persistence. A phrase echoed in my mind at that moment. Success isn't a given. It's the result of effort and perseverance. That day, I returned home with a strange feeling, a sense that I was missing something important, something I had never seen before, or rather, something I had never wanted to see. But it was only the beginning, and I still had to learn how to face a reality I had never been ready to accept. In the days following that trip, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. The calloused hands of the fruit seller, the weary yet determined eyes of the elderly woman, and all the faces I had never noticed before, now clearer than ever. I began to realize that my life had never truly been difficult. I had never had to wake up at the crack of dawn to make a living. Never known the anxiety of not having enough money for a single meal. But I still didn't fully understand what my father was trying to teach me. I thought I could just continue living as I always had, without a care in the world. Until, one morning, my father told me to get up early. Very early. I was surprised because he had never woken me up like that before. He stood outside my door, his eyes firm but with a touch of gentleness. "Today, you're going to work," he said, his voice calm as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but when I saw the seriousness on his face, I knew he wasn't kidding at all. "You will work at my company, but not in a fancy office, not with the best managers. You will start from scratch, from the lowest position." I didn't even have time to react before my father drove me to the company. But it wasn't the main office, where everything was polished and convenient. Instead, he led me to a small room on the lower floor, where employees were working tirelessly among towering stacks of papers and documents. People I had never even noticed before, not once. My father introduced me to a man with a stern face, thick glasses that made him look anything but lenient. "This is Mr. William. From today onward, you'll be working under his supervision." Before leaving, my father looked at me and said, "You have to learn to work from the smallest things. Don't think about comfort, think about effort." Mr. William didn't waste any time. He immediately handed me a massive pile of documents. "Your job is to check for errors, review figures, and report back to me. If you make mistakes, do it again. No complaints." At first I thought this was some sort of joke, someone like me sorting through dry, tedious paperwork. But when I looked around, everyone was busy, completely focused on their tasks. No one paid attention to me. No one cared who I was. I sat down and started working. The numbers swirled before my eyes, jumbled and exhausting. After an hour, my head felt like it was about to explode. But I couldn't stop. Every time I reported back, Mr. William would say the same thing. "Wrong. Do it again." No encouragement, no praise, just work and relentless rigor. I started feeling discouraged. Every day was the same. The piles of paperwork never seemed to shrink. The exhaustion slowly built up. But then, one day, I overheard a conversation between two of my colleagues. One was a middle-aged man, his hair streaked with gray. He was talking about working overtime just to afford his child's tuition fees. I sat there, listening silently, saying nothing. Before then, I had never thought about stories like that. To me, money was just numbers without meaning. But to him, every dollar was earned through sweat and sacrifice. The next day, I decided to try harder. Not for my father, not for Mr. William, but for myself. I started paying more attention to the work. I learned how to analyze data, how to check for errors, how to present reports clearly, and gradually, I found myself making fewer mistakes. Mr. William didn't give out praise, but when he finally said, "Well done," I knew I was making progress. I began to realize that success isn't something that's handed to you. It has to be built through persistence, through relentless effort. And the most important lesson I learned during those days was patience. Something I had never possessed before. While working downstairs, I also had the chance to talk more with the people I once considered invisible. The employees who worked silently, unnoticed, but who still tried their best every day for their families, for their own goals. It was the first time I truly understood that work isn't just a way to earn money. It's also a way for each person to prove their worth, little by little, through the smallest of tasks. And as I gradually found joy in my work, I also started to see myself change. But this was only the beginning. And I didn't yet know that the road ahead would be far more challenging than I could imagine. The days of working under Mr. Williams' strict supervision were anything but easy. I couldn't even count how many times my work was handed back to me for small mistakes I would have never cared about before. But gradually, I realized that every correction, every chance to fix my mistakes was an opportunity to improve. Bit by bit, I started to get better. The numbers no longer overwhelmed me as they once did. I learned how to analyze, how to double-check, and how to correct errors more carefully. I learned how to be patient, something I had never truly possessed before. Instead of feeling exhausted by monotonous work, I started to find satisfaction in completing a challenging task. That sense of pride when my report was approved by Mr. William without needing any corrections. But the most important lesson I learned wasn't from the files of paperwork. It was from the people around me. During that time, I often had lunch with my colleagues. Simple meals not in fancy restaurants like before. They told me about their families, about the struggles they faced. Some had to work 2 jobs to support their children. Others were balancing work with caring for their elderly parents. And some, despite their exhaustion, kept going because they hoped for a better life. The more I listened, the smaller I felt. The things I once took for granted were distant dreams for so many others. I also learned from Mr. William. He was strict, but fair. He never handed out praise lightly, but when I did well, he would acknowledge it. One time, I completed a small project Mr. William had assigned. I spent hours meticulously checking every number, every detail. When I placed the report on his desk, he glanced over it and said, "Not bad, but you need to be faster." Just 3 words, but at that moment, they felt like a tremendous compliment, because I knew that to earn that recognition, I had worked incredibly hard. Gradually, I began to feel like I belonged there. No longer the spoiled rich kid who only knew how to spend money and have fun. I started to understand that work wasn't just an obligation. It was a way to prove my own worth. And perhaps the most valuable lesson I learned was the respect I gained for the silent workers around me. I recalled the story Mr. Thomas, an older colleague, shared during one of our lunches. He had worked at the company for 20 years, starting from the very bottom and gradually climbing his way up the ladder. He once told me, "Young man, work is never easy. But if you pour your heart into it, even the smallest task can give you the most valuable thing: growth." Those words made me think a lot. I began to approach my work more seriously. Every morning I arrived at the company a little earlier, spending extra time to prepare thoroughly. Each time my work was handed back, I no longer felt frustrated, but saw it as an opportunity to improve. And then, one day, Mr. William called me into his office. "You've improved a lot," he said, his tone still firm, but no longer as cold as before. "But if you want to go further, you have to learn how to work with others. It's not just about doing your own job well, but about learning to lead." I understood that it was a hint. I needed to learn how to work in a team, how to guide others, and most importantly, how to lead with empathy and responsibility. And that was also when my father called me up to the main office. When I walked into his office, I saw him sitting at his desk, his eyes filled with a pride I had never seen before. "Son," he said, "I've been watching you this whole time. I've seen your transformation, and I am incredibly proud of that." He opened a drawer, pulled out a small key, and placed it in front of me. "This is your office. It's a small office, but it's yours. From now on, you will be responsible for managing a small team. This will be a greater challenge for you, but I believe you're ready." I looked at the key in my hand, feeling its weight. It wasn't just a physical key. It was trust, recognition, and above all, an opportunity. I knew my journey had only just begun, but now I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Holding the key in my hand, I felt its weight heavier than any expensive item I had ever owned, not because it was made of gold or encrusted with diamonds, but because it represented something I never thought I would have recognition from my father. He had seen my effort not through promises or empty words, but through the days I worked hard to do my job well. The office my father gave me wasn't big. It was just a small room with a simple desk, an old leather chair, and a window overlooking the bustling city. But to me, it felt like a priceless gift. From that day on, I was no longer just an employee sorting through paperwork. I was put in charge of managing a small team of 5. The same colleagues I once thought of as dull workers. But now, I understood that each of them had their own story. Their own struggles that deserved my respect. At first, managing the team wasn't easy. There were times when I felt completely out of control, when projects fell behind schedule, when team members disagreed with the way I assigned tasks. But I learned that leadership isn't about giving orders. It's about knowing how to listen, how to understand, and how to encourage others to keep trying. I learned how to organize tasks, how to delegate responsibilities effectively. I spent time getting to know each member of my team, understanding their strengths and weaknesses. Once, we had to complete an important report within just 2 days. Everyone was tense, exhausted. I realized that if I just forced them to work my way, we wouldn't achieve the best results. Instead, I talked to each person, listened to their opinions, and found the best solutions for everyone to collaborate effectively. As a result, we completed the report on time. And not only that, it was highly praised by Mr. William, the man I once thought would never give me any recognition. He looked at me and said, "Not bad. You've learned how to work with others. But remember, there's always something new to learn." Those words from Mr. William made me realize that success is not a destination, but an endless journey. From that day on, I no longer worked just to prove something to my father or Mr. William. I worked for myself because I wanted to become a better person, someone who could be proud of what they achieved. And then, one late afternoon, my father called me up to his office. He looked at me, his expression softer than ever. "Son, I've seen the change in you. You've accomplished what I always hoped for. But most importantly, you've found yourself." I looked at my father, for the first time truly understanding him. Understanding that everything he had done, all the challenges he had set for me, were meant to help me discover my own worth. "I'm proud of you," he said, his deep voice warm and full of emotion. Those words made me realize how far I had come. A journey from dependency and laziness to effort and growth. Now, I was no longer the young man who only knew how to spend and indulge. I had learned how to earn money, how to manage, and most importantly, how to face challenges without giving up. I started setting bigger goals for myself, not just to gain recognition, but to improve myself. I wanted to build my own career with my own hands and effort, because I had learned success is not something that's handed to you. It's something you have to create for yourself. And on that journey, I knew there would be many challenges, many failures. But this time I wasn't afraid, because I had learned how to stand up, how to work hard, and how to turn dreams into reality. My story isn't a special one. It's just the story of a young person who found their own worth through struggles and perseverance. But if you've ever felt lost, ever thought that life would always be easy, I hope this story helps you see things differently. And who knows, maybe one day, you'll find your own path too.